If you are currently staring at this screen with 42 open browser tabs, 3 of which are about 14th century plumbing and 1 of which is a half-finished tax return, then we need to have a very quiet, very serious conversation about the physical state of your skull. You see, as your resident mind decoder, I have spent our previous sessions helping you understand that your scanner brain is a masterpiece of evolutionary integration. We've talked about the beauty of the M-shaped career and how to build a bridge between your vast, seemingly random interests. But today, we have to look at the darker side of that curiosity. We have to talk about the physical erosion of your primary asset. Because while you are busy simulating a dozen different futures, you might accidentally be performing a slow-motion, high-tech lobotomy on yourself. The current pain you are feeling, that vague, persistent brain fog, the way you walk into a room and forget why you're there, or the terrifying sensation that you are somehow less sharp than you were 5 years ago, isn't just a side effect of getting older. It is the biological signal of a brain that is literally withering. In the world of neuropsychology, we don't just talk about forgetfulness. We talk about cortical thinning and hippocampal atrophy. We are talking about your brain physically getting smaller, losing its density, and shrinking away like a piece of fruit left too long in the sun. And for the introverted multitasker, the culprit isn't a lack of intelligence. It is 3 specific high-velocity habits that are eating your gray matter from the inside out. The first habit is the one we scanners hold most dear, the myth of the high-speed context switch. You think you are multitasking. You think you are a high-performance processor jumping between a coding project, a Slack notification, and a podcast about urban beekeeping. But neurologically, that is a lie. Your brain doesn't do 2 things at once. It performs a switching maneuver that is incredibly metabolically expensive. Every time you shift your attention, your prefrontal cortex, the expensive, high-energy CEO of your mind, has to load a completely new set of neural maps. Research from the University of London found that multitasking actually causes a temporary drop in IQ that is more significant than losing a full night of sleep. But the long-term horror is worse. Chronic context switching keeps your brain in a state of fragmented attention, which leads to the thinning of the gray matter in the anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for emotional regulation and empathy. You aren't just becoming less focused, you are physically losing the neural hardware required to be a functional, balanced human being. You are revving your engine in neutral until the pistons start to melt. And for the multitasker, this is the most common path to a shrunken mind. This leads us directly into the second biological hazard, information gluttony without output. Because your brain is naturally tuned for far transfer, the ability to see connections across different fields, you are likely an information addict. You spend 4 hours a day learning, which usually means passively consuming long-form videos or reading articles about things you will never actually use. You think you are building an M-shaped life, but neurologically, you are just clogging your buffer. Your brain is designed to be a processor, not a storage unit. When you flood your hippocampus, the center of memory and navigation, with vast amounts of unorganized, passive data, you trigger a neural pruning response. If you don't move information from your working memory into active, generative use, the brain decides that the neural pathways associated with that information are noise and begins to dismantle them. You are effectively training your brain to forget. This is why you can remember the plot of a movie you saw 3 years ago, but can't remember the strategy you discussed in a meeting 3 hours ago. You are starving your neural growth by overfeeding your digital stomach, and your hippocampus is shrinking as a result. The third, and perhaps most insidious habit for the introvert, is the chronic cortisol loop of the open task. Because we live so much inside our heads, we tend to collect open loops, unfinished projects, unreturned messages, and vague ambitions that we never quite start or finish. Based on the Zeigarnik effect, your brain is hardwired to remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. For the scanner, this means your mental RAM is permanently occupied by 100 chirping alarms. This constant state of unresolved business keeps your amygdala, your brain's ancient smoke detector, in a state of low-level chronic arousal. This keeps your cortisol levels permanently elevated. High cortisol is a neurotoxin. It specifically targets the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, inhibiting the production of new neurons. You aren't just stressed, you are living in a chemical bath that prevents your brain from repairing itself. You feel tired but wired because your environment, both physical and digital, is keeping you in a state of biological survival mode, where creativity and deep thought are seen as non-essential luxuries. So, if the prospect of your brain withering away like a forgotten grape in the back of the fridge has finally caught your attention, let's talk about the biological counteroffensive. As your mind decoder, I have some good news for you. Your brain is not a static piece of hardware that simply decays. It is a masterpiece of neuroplasticity. While those 3 habits have been performing a tactical strike on your gray matter, you have the power to initiate a total structural rebuild. We aren't going to fix this through trying harder or more discipline, because as we've established, your willpower battery is already being drained by the very habits we are trying to kill. Instead, we are going to use the geometry of your career and the mechanics of your hardware to move from a state of neural decay to neural expansion. We are moving from the dash-shaped life of shallow panic to the M-shaped life of deep polymathic mastery. The first step in our modeling solution is the 90-minute executive silo. To stop the context-switching tax from shrinking your anterior cingulate cortex, you must stop treating your focus like a shared office space where anyone can walk in at any time. You need to hire a neurological gatekeeper. For exactly 90 minutes a day, you enter a state of absolute monotasking. You pick one leg of your M, one deep pillar, and you close every secondary window physically and digitally. By forcing your prefrontal cortex to stay locked onto a singular neural map for an extended period, you are engaging in a process called myelination. You are physically thickening the fatty insulation around your neurons, turning a dirt road of thought into a high-speed fiber optic cable. This doesn't just make you more productive, it physically increases the density of your gray matter. You are essentially taking your brain to the gym to reverse the thinning of the cortex, proving to your CEO that it is safe to come back into the office. This structural rebuild continues with the Generative Output Protocol. To stop your hippocampus from pruning away your brilliance due to information gluttony, you must adopt a strict 1-to-1 ratio of consumption to creation. If you spend an hour researching the architectural history of Prague, you must spend an hour applying that knowledge, writing a summary, drawing a sketch, or connecting it to a project in your primary pillar. In neuropsychology, this triggers long-term potentiation. When you move from passive receiving to active generating, you are telling your hippocampus that this information is a high-value asset, not background noise. By weaving your random scanner interests into a creative output, you are performing far transfer in real time, which keeps the neural pathways vibrant and expansive. You stop being a digital stomach and start being a mental engine, turning the residue of your curiosity into the fuel for your genius. Finally, we have to perform a radical metabolic flush to stop the cortisol from poisoning your prefrontal cortex. We are going to close the open loops of the Zeigarnik effect by moving from mental storage to external processing. Since your brain refuses to let go of an unstarted task, you must provide it with what researchers call psychological closure. You need an external prefrontal cortex, a trusted system like a digital garden or a Zettelkasten, where every random spark of curiosity and every unfinished to-do is immediately offloaded. When you write down an idea for that urban beekeeping hobby or that unreturned email, you aren't just making a list. You are sending a neurological signal that says, it's safe to forget this now. The hard drive has it. This instantly flushes the cortisol from your system and frees up the metabolic glucose your brain has been wasting on background refreshing. You move from a state of survival to a state of cognitive ease, allowing your brain to finally engage in the deep, restorative focus it was designed for. So, let's put the map together. You are not a failure, and you are not broken. You are a bridge builder who has been living in an environment designed to dismantle your bridges. The self-blame ends today. By adopting the 90-minute silo, the Generative Output Protocol, and the external prefrontal cortex, you are performing a biological reset. You are reclaimed the gray matter that was stolen by context switching, gluttony, and chronic stress. You move from being a distracted scanner to becoming an M-shaped powerhouse who can see the music in the data and the history in the code, because your mind finally has the space to connect the dots. You were meant to master a dozen different worlds, but you can only do that if you protect the hardware that makes it possible. To help you with this neuro restoration, I've put together a tool called the Gray Matter Audit. It's a simple 3-page framework to help you identify your highest risk habits and design your first 90-minute silo in under 10 minutes. You can download it at the link below. Stop pecking at the glass screen for random rewards. Reclaim your density. Rebuild your IQ. Decode your mind. You aren't shrinking anymore. You are expanding into the person you were always meant to be. I am the Mind Decoder, and I will see you in the next one.